Did you know that self-understanding and reflection are important components of entrepreneurship? To give you an idea, an adult makes on average 35,000 decisions a day. And so you can imagine how important it is for an entrepreneur to make the right decision to grow his or her own business. What we would like to learn in this video is how entrepreneurs reflect after making the decision and how through reflection entrepreneurs are able to improve on their own decision making. Besides, it's also important to acquire a deep self-understanding so that entrepreneurs can spot, identify opportunities in the market, and then they can match. They can determine if these opportunities are the right fit based on the inner self of entrepreneurs. That's why self-understanding will help students, learners, generally speaking, and professionals to think, behave, and act like entrepreneurs. In this class, we are going to learn how to reflect like entrepreneurs, how to self-investigate yourself in the same way entrepreneurs do, so that you can make better decisions in your everyday life, in your business venture, and also in your career. The purpose of the video is first to understand why self-awareness and reflection are essential components of entrepreneurship. And the second objective is to demonstrate how the self-understanding and the reflection are essential for all the entrepreneurial learners. So to clarify this, let me open the video with a couple of questions for discussion, and I would say also for some reflection on past experiences. So the first question is, do you remember any of your business leaders, in case you are already working, or any of your teachers, or generally speaking, any of your mentors? And even more so, why do you remember them? And consequently, why do you need to reflect to be an entrepreneur? Or in case you already have a business, why do you reflect? Why do you need to reflect to be a better entrepreneur? So the answer to these two questions is that you probably remember some business leaders or some teachers, some mentors, because they help you reflect. They guided you through this journey into yourself to understand what you did right, what you did wrong, and to learn how to think on your experiences. So let me here clarify one point. We hear very often people saying that we learn from experiences. We hear people saying you need to experience because only by having experience you can actually learn. And so what I would like to say here is that this is not true. You do not learn from experiences. You learn from reflection on your experiences. So this is also my encouragement for your future careers. It's good to have experiences, of course, but if you do not reflect on such experiences, then you will not learn. So accumulating experiences just for the sake of accumulating experiences doesn't really lead to any meaningful learning. So let me give you an example on this, how to reflect on experiences. And this example is based on one of my experiences. This was probably 5 or 6 years ago. I was in Yangon in Myanmar, and I had this meeting. So it was a consulting meeting, and I was to introduce a European company that wanted to find business partners and potentially also some agents or distributors in Myanmar. So we had this business meeting with with a local Myanmar company, and the business meeting actually went very well. So, the kind of meeting where you really have a right feeling that can lead to some meaningful positive outcome. And here you can also see a photo from that meeting with the owner of the company. And then what happened is that, of course, I wanted to clarify, to make things straightforward, and to let this company, the local company, understand what kind of benefits, what kind of incentives they could have earned out of a deal. And in this case, since we were moving towards an agency agreement, so I set forth what are the conditions, what are the terms for the agency. And this is when the meeting that went so well suddenly ended. In 30 seconds, the owner of the company, the management say, okay, we understand, thank you, and goodbye. And obviously I was extremely surprised that when we start talking about the most important point of a meeting, which was, the commission fees in the business. So we were talking about, in a business, what is the most important part. So like the revenues, profits, and the money for all the participants in the business. And this is when actually the business meeting ended. So I was really shocked. So then I asked a Burmese colleague of mine, and we went through all the meetings. So I kind of repeated everything that happened in the meeting that went quite long. And then at the end, he told me, the problem is exactly that you wanted to clarify something, the commission fees, that you should not have clarified in the first place. Because from the Myanmar Burmese perspective, bringing up this topic, especially in a first meeting, is considered to be disrespectful, because it seems that the partner you are going to do business with needs money. And so what is the learning point here? The learning point is that if I had this experience, but then if I didn't go back to my colleague, and we spent literally half a day to investigate everything of what went right and what actually went wrong in the meeting. And from this, I learned the hard way, how to convey the same type of message in a very nuanced, gray area way. So to let people understand that there are actually potentially some benefits for them, but without addressing specifically the commission. And so this leads to the very topic of today's video. We do not actually learn from experience, but we learn by reflecting on our experiences. And this should be incorporated into student experience, student life, and further career. From an entrepreneurial perspective, so we know that entrepreneurs, the way they learn is to take actions. Action as a way to learn new things. So the entrepreneurial way of learning, we start obviously from actions, starting with who you are and what you have. And then this we move to the learning, which means basically to reflect on what you did, what you accomplished, and what you did not accomplish. And the final part will be the building. So apply what you learn through your reflection, and then assess the necessary resources to pursue the growth of your business. At this point, we also need to introduce a couple of academic theories that can help us have a better understanding of the way people learn. The first theory is symbolic interactionism. Symbolic interactionism is also important for the example that I brought up earlier from Myanmar, because in this case there were two different cultural norms, my cultural norms and Burmese business leader cultural norms, two different society, so different symbols and meanings that our different society assign to actions, words, and so on. So what is symbolic interactionism? So symbolic interactionism can be defined as a theory assuming that people respond to elements of their environments according to the subjective meanings that they attach to these elements, such as meanings being created and modified through social interaction involving symbolic communication with other people. So here, an important part of symbolic interactionism is actually played by society. So according to symbolic interactionism, we can define society as the product of shared symbols, and one of these shared symbols is actually the language. So in a society, there are events, there are social interactions, and all these social interactions are symbols, and they are passed down from across generations. And the way they are passed down is through the language. So you can also see here the circle of symbolic interactionism. So we have a society assigning symbols, establishing meanings to these symbols, and then developing different views and meanings, and these leading finally to communication with each other. There are, of course, some limitations of symbolic interactionism. So one limitation is that symbolic interactionism does not focus so much on the emotional side of the self-understanding. While symbolic interactionism look at the self more in terms of a rational self, how we plan, how we calculate the effects of our actions. So to have a more comprehensive understanding, we can also look at learning theories. So learning theories, rather than stressing who we are in the context of society, they will tell us how we learn. There are many learning theories, for example, behavioral learning theories or constructivism learning theory. But in this lecture, we are just going to see one of them, which is the cognitive learning theory. Cognitive learning theory focuses on internal and external forces that can influence the ability of people, of learners, to learn new things. In a way, cognitive learning theory utilizes the own skills, the knowledge, and the memories of people to help them learn new things. To give you an example of what a cognitive learning theory mandates is to add discussions. That's why at the beginning of this video there were like a few questions for discussion. And then another very crucial component of a cognitive learning theory is the reflection. So what do these academic theories tell us in terms of entrepreneurship? So from symbolic interactionism, we can learn how an entrepreneur behave, learn in the context of a society. And from the perspective of cognitive psychology, cognitive learning theory is how the entrepreneur can reflect and therefore have a better self-understanding of his or her past actions and then implement these adjustments for future decisions. So who we are and what we know, symbolic interactionism and cognitive psychology increase our capacity to reflect. Generally, people will look at some ideal entrepreneurs. They will look at Jack Ma, in China, we will look at Elon Musk in the United States. And what they want to do is to imitate these entrepreneurs. But we should ask ourselves, is this the best way to become an entrepreneur? Should we imitate other people? Or should we reflect on ourselves, adjust, modify our behavior, and then become entrepreneurs? And so this is what we are learning today. We should not focus on how to become the next Elon Musk or the next Jack Ma. This is not the right approach to be a successful entrepreneur. The right approach to be a successful entrepreneur, or even just to be an entrepreneur, for starter, is to have self-understanding. When we have self-understanding through reflection, then we can lead to the opportunity recognition. We can lead to improve matching between opportunity recognition and what we want to achieve as human beings and as entrepreneurs. This also leads to higher commitment to solve a problem, to solve a pain point in the market or in society. And finally, this is also tied to higher success of our own venture. So to recap on this point, what we should really practice is to make sense of the past, of our own past experiences. And we do this in order to understand our present. And finally, this will lead us to make better decisions for the future. In conclusions, let me give you one more example and application of the theories in the concept that we have analyzed today. So as you know, entrepreneurs usually start from a problem in society, in the market. By reflecting on themselves, then they will be also able to solve the problem. How can they do this? So let me try to make this less theoretical, less academic, and just jump to a very practical, very tangible example. Consider, for example, a odor-free fabric like polygiene. Polygiene is a type of fabric that you can use in many type of different applications. For example, polygiene is used for hunting, because when you are hunting, you don't want your target to smell your odor. So that's why a polygiene is generally adopted for hunting or also for sports. So a case of some entrepreneurs in the United States was to use polygiene also for bed sheets and the fabric that can be, for example, used in hospitals. And why they did so? Because they understood that they could apply this type of technology not only in the context of hunting or sports, but also in the healthcare. Because also in the healthcare, when we are a patient, you may have the same problem where you want more resistant type of fabric. So this is the application and meaning. And here we also see some of the typical mental leaps that entrepreneurs are able to do between different type of technology or different type of markets. But then the final point, when you are matching this idea with yourself, why you? This is when you are making the reflection. This is when you are synthesizing what you see, what you experience as a person, as a human being, even before as an entrepreneur. And then by making this synthesis through reflection, then you are matching this business idea with who you are and what you want to achieve as an entrepreneur. So just to emphasize one more time, what are the key lessons for any aspiring entrepreneur? So the key lesson is you should not look at Elon Musk or Jack Ma or any other successful entrepreneur to become like them. But instead, you should look within yourself. Apply the reflection, and by having this higher, stronger, more robust self-understanding, then matching your self-understanding with the opportunity that you see in the market. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video. Bye!